day. I waited and waited with flowers in my arms for the dream I'd create. I waited till dreams like my heart were all broken. The flowers were all dead and the words were unspoken. Grief that I knew was beyond all consoling. The beat of my heart was the bell that was tolling. Static of stumbling. Then came a Sunday when you came to find me. They bore me to church and I left you behind me. My eyes would not see one I wanted to love me. The eye and the flowers were forever behind me. The bell tolled for me, and the wind whispered, never. But you I have loved, and God bless you forever. Last of all time.
Og jeg er kjempestolt for at vi har Diamanda Galás her i bygget. Hun venter faktisk på knertenrommet. Så det er sånn a meeting of worlds. Så hun har jo sett denne filmen en del ganger, så hun ba seg unnskyldt om å se denne en gang til. Men vi skal se en 27 minutters film som heter Schrei 27, som er basert på et vokalverk av henne som heter Schrei X. Og hun ville poengtere med det at vanligvis med musikk og film så er det liksom filmen som kommer først og musikken som kommer etterpå. Her er det omvendt. Her er det musikken som står i fokus, og det er stemmen som er hovedpersonen. Og jeg håper dere er forberedt. Dette er 27 minutter film som handler om tortur. Det er sterke ting, dette her. Og etterpå så skal vi snakke litt grann. Hun kan få lov å videre utdype hvorfor hun har lagd den og sånne ting. Vi har tid for noen veldig få spørsmål etterpå også. Så hvis dere har lyst til å spørre om noe, så kan dere tenke på det. Var det noe mer praktisk informasjon jeg har nå? Jeg tror egentlig det var det. Velkommen, og takk for at dere er her. Velkommen til kulturen. Og så, ja, vær så god. kind of hard to speak after seeing that. Thank you very much, Diamanda, for coming here, and thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to show the film.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to speak with Anita.
I talked a little bit earlier about what came first, like we did in the Knechten room, about the voice and the images, and I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about the background to the film.
It's very strange holding a microphone without singing. I feel I'm supposed to be doing something. I think, well, why don't I use this moment as a microcosm for the fact that the film started from the voice by saying, this is a performative instrument for me. It's very strange. It takes me out of my parlor room personality and delivers me to another place, which is unpredictable, and I like that about it. But, however, I can't do that right now. Because I'm not being paid, baby. I'm sorry about that. I am being paid. Not for that.
Neither am I, actually.
Fair enough, darling. Fair enough. No, actually, the last time I said a comment like that was when I was in the courtroom for the St. Patrick's Cathedral die-in that we did and act up, and I had to go on opposite damn rather. See, I confused. It's a talk show, but it was a courtroom. Dan Rather's son, and he was saying something like, please tell us what you said to Cardinal O'Connor before you did the die-in. Thank you. And I said, I generally get paid for that sort of thing. And I forgot. This is a courtroom. I didn't even think of it. And everyone burst out laughing, and we were almost thrown out of court, which was great. But I forgot, who knew? And so looking at this thing again, I get confused about it. So,
Do you want a microphone stand?
I'll get used to it. I have to. It will probably de-evolve my performance style forever. But just 20 minutes.
I think they have those Madonna mics.
No. That will de-evolve my vocal cords forever. Oh, no, that's all right, darling. Just one sip.
Schrei X was a performance in complete darkness.
Yes. What happened was I was invited by the Staten Island American radio, new radio broadcasting company. And I'm saying the name incorrectly. It was located in Staten Island, not far from the Willowbrook School. Very much misnamed because it was an asylum, the Willowbrook Asylum. And they asked me to do a piece on Bedlam. And so I said, why, of course, that's what I generally get commissioned for. And so I started working. And the piece was in quadraphonic sound, 4 microphones going to independent channels, and 1 microphone going to all of them. And it reflected the proximity of Willowbrook to the radio station. The Willowbrook was a place where people, right after World War II, started sending their children, their disposable humans, let's say. They started sending them there, and the people would get there, and within 2 days would have hepatitis. So everyone had hepatitis, and we were talking about, I don't know, sometimes 5,000 people, 10,000 people. It was really a very huge population, and it was a really horrific sight. And then there were many papers that were written, and then eventually Geraldo Rivera did an expose about it, and then that was many years afterwards it stopped. But
this was in 1930 it started?
It was opened for business, per se, before the end of World War II, but then it got open. Then it was officially opened after World War II, I believe. I don't have my dates with me right now, but and it didn't close for a very, very long time. And
I think I read it was 1987.
Yeah.
Officially.
Yeah. And it was really, I mean,
for mentally
disabled. But they had people in there that had just merely physical disabilities that were confused, as in those days, this was so often the case, for mental disabilities. And let's say what is, quote, a mental disability, that falls under many different categories, as we've found with autistic people. And I'm not qualified to make the gigantic delineation among and between mental states of, quote, incapacity, but a person could presumably say a person in his family he or she didn't like had X, Y, or Z, and the person merely be an impediment to the household for some reason that is just financial. And like the island of Leros in eastern Greece, the east of Greece, a person would become completely mad after being in a place like that. So in that case, there were only volunteers that were asked to work at the hospital, and there were fishermen, or they had been people who had been prison guards, because the place was a prison before that. And so, I mean, they didn't know how to give injections, they didn't know anything about this, and they were asked to just experiment on these people, and they were terrified of the people, and the people were terrified of them. And I saw a tremendous amount of footage. I've seen much footage, a lot of footage from places like this. But these places also have been, they've also been used for persons that were political dissidents, and they would front as hospitals, and in fact they were prisons. And this is what's going on in Greece right now with persons who are considered undesirables. That means a lot of immigrants, it means prostitutes, people with HIV, they're opening so many prisons and, quote, hospitals, that it's become an asylum within an asylum. It's a very, very curious predicament, and it happens in so many countries when the population gets blamed for the frivolousness of the government's fiscal meanderings, so to speak. So, taking this back to Shrai 27, you have, in a sense, a picture of one individual put in a prison, alias asylum, or vice versa, who is being interrogated because this person can be interrogated, because this person can be mishandled, lost in society, and there is no answer to the questions. There is no answer to any of the questions. And the person asking the questions know there is no answer. But the questions continue to be answered. And so at the very end, the person who is screaming is saying, you know there's no answer. There is no answer. And there's no answer. And the violence is a violence of a person who knows he or she is going to die in any case. Because with an admission, there's death. Without an admission, there's death. There's death. Simply, there is death. Because it's amusing to the persons committing it. Just as Juarez is amusing to the people who are sexual offenders. Juarez is outside of, it's in Mexico, it's outside of the Tijuana area. And I live on the border area between San Diego. I live in San Diego, south. So it's kind of Baja California. So a lot of people, many women have been missing in Juarez for years and found with all their hands and legs amputated and sexually defiled. And they're just factory workers who are considered disposable and used for initiation rites, or just by jaded businessmen because they want to have some sort of extra titillation.
So the film is a kind of a political protest work, wanting to highlight this kind of history and also the continuation of this kind of interrogation. In previous work you've done, you've highlighted this ideas of surveillance, like in Panopticon, and really sort of finding the voice of the oppressed, or speaking out for the oppressed. Has this always been your motivation, or is this?
You know what's curious about it is it never was my motivation, and it never was, and yet it is. At the end of the day, it is, because it's what it looks like. I mean, if I choose not to recognize that, it exists without me, so it must be. What I mean to say is that it comes from a very deep part of me, as with anyone's work. It comes from a very deep part that has felt. It's like, it's just like, shut up. Music is music. Music is music. One could make a point for black classical music. One could make a point for white classical music. If we want to really get prosaic, we can go as far as we want with it. But the fact is, nobody owns, quote, the music, new music, any music. The only thing you can hope to own are your ears and the technique that you've worked on and the music you've decided to listen to, and that's it. And all this other crap is just, it's propaganda, and I don't like it. I really don't like it.
It's also interesting to hear you talk about this in the light of last night's performance, because I don't know if you had the opportunity to see the beautiful show yesterday in Kanonhallen with Øivind Ness's arrangements.
Which you were responsible for inviting me to do.
So I'm kind of slightly biased here. But yeah, you're talking about improvisation and jazz and classical and so on, and this was kind of a meeting, a little bit of worlds with a conductor and Øivind Ness, who's very much of a classical composer, and you, and just have the privilege of being part of this process from the project in its infant stage and up until yesterday, where there's this going back from what is improvised and what gets notated, and when you have 60 players, you need instruction. And so maybe you want to say a little bit about about your experience in that whole.
What an honor for me to be able to play with such great musicians. My God, and these are the kind of musicians who have to take a score that is really difficult, really, really difficult. Like, for example, in the Kevin Boland's piece, very difficult piece, have to have 2 days to rehearse it. Maybe, and by this I don't mean 2 full days. 2 days of maybe 2 hours one day, 3 hours the next, maximum. A dress rehearsal and performance. And those people have to be master readers, master musicians. This stuff is really hard to read. I mean, and I don't know how they do it, honestly. I don't know how they do it. I was a dreadful sight reader. I may even be worse than I used to be, probably. And I was amazed at their abilities, and their humility, their sweetness. It was a great, great honor for me to play with them, and we had such fun together. We really did. And the conductor, Ingar, I don't know how to say his last name.
Bergby.
Bergby?
Yeah.
Okay. He's extraordinary. He's such a great musician. I mean, and he is very, very clear in his cues. He is not one of those guys who's just going through the motions. I mean, he is really. I mean, he's very, very clear, and how he can do that with having a score for such a brief amount of time, this is truly amazing to me. I worked under conductors that really didn't know their material, and I would have to avoid watching them in order to get the one. I mean, seriously. And if you're preparing for a high D, you really need to just not look at that clown up there. And this guy is the consummate professional. I mean, and I have to say that working with conductors is something I don't do hardly ever.
There's a kind of mysticism around conductors in a way. They're quite powerful personalities, and they have to be, I guess. I don't know that many personally, I have to say, confess, but and they're very often male. I only maybe know a couple of female. It's a sort of a mysterious profession.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it, but I can tell you that this gentleman is a great, great musician.
Great.
Whether he's probably a pianist. I mean, I know that he is. He has to be a conductor. If you're not a pianist, you can't possibly be a conductor. I wouldn't think. I know there'll be a conductor here that will define me. Define not me personally. Go ahead, define him.
Try. And you know Ness, of course, the composer.
His orchestrations, which one must be very careful. I find that word so misleading. When a person writes, Diamanda composed a work, and then Øivind
Ness.
Øivind Ness, I get the last name's wrong. That this gentleman orchestrated it. It implies that it doesn't say much about what orchestration is, and I would have to say that, whereas I wrote the voice and piano work, after that, this person, who's called an orchestration person, is the one who wrote all the orchestral parts, all of them, based in part upon my original composition, but after that, he's on his own, and that is not my work, that is his work. And I believe that one should more accurately say voice and piano work composed by Diamanda Galás, orchestral work composed by Young. And that is why I made the point on stage, because I just think it is gruesomely unfair, especially in, quote, free music circles, to suddenly have some guy asking master musicians, improvisers, to improvise their parts and then suddenly take credit as the composer of the work. I think that is just hideous. They're trained for 25 years just so they can get an also ran credit in a big man's composer record. What a bunch of puke. I really dislike that. Giving credit doesn't hurt, doesn't break your legs.
Because when you invite musicians to play free, it's one proposition.
It's for free.
And then suddenly it winds up having someone else's name on it.
Yeah.
Mentioning no names.
That's all right. I'll have a footnote list later. Who pays me?
So, might you work with Øivind Ness more?
Yes, we've already discussed that, and I have some electronic projects that I want to do with him, and that could be very, very interesting, especially with the addition of the basses and the percussion and the horns and whatever else, I mean, really, he has a mastery that I don't have, and what a great pleasure that is. It's I used to feel much more close to the vest about those things. I used to say, I don't know how to do it, and nobody knows how to do it. Really, that's really something. But I've since graduated in pursuit of music, and well, that's nice.
And does it? Do you ever get surprised what your voice can do? I mean, what
Yes.
can happen? Does it surprise you, your vocal capability?
If I'm not surprised, then I'm bored to death. If I'm not surprised, then I don't want to do it anymore. Then I would have retired. But what's happened, contrary to the mythology, let's say, about the voice, and the mythology makers about the vocal instrument, that is that I've learned to do more over the years rather than less. Far more. Far, far more. And it's just that you have to attend to the demands of the instrument, the vocal instrument. But you also, again, if you have ears, that's an absurd... If you've studied, and you've studied all sorts of music for many years, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't quantify as a meaningful statement. And so a person who wants to to do a lot of time music has to fight the absurdity, the laziness, and the mediocrity of the persons who often write about music, for whom God knows, I don't know who they write for. Honestly, I'm not referring to people who know what they're talking about, but I am referring to the rest of them. In other words, 99%.
You write yourself.
Indeed. And I will be writing a compendium, a required compendium for writers, critical writers of music.
I'd be very interested in reading that.
You won't need to see any of it. You know your work. But I'm telling you, it appears to me that most persons who, and I know many of them, who used to be paid to write it, we paid a modicum, not much, as we all know, to write about music, are now not being paid at all or have been fired. And in these persons' places have come
That is the composer of the orchestral music.